What did we learn from a 2-hour Stokes interview? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States, out of our offices in San Diego, California, and St. Louis, Missouri. In this video, we're going to talk about a 2-hour Stokes interview that I attended earlier this week. For those of you who don't know, a Stokes interview is what happens when USCIS wants to test the validity of a marriage, the accuracy of a marriage, whether a marriage is real, when a foreign national is attempting to obtain an immigration benefit based on that marriage. Now, in this particular case, it was very, very unusual. And it was really sort of a dumb Stokes interview. It was dumb to even have a Stokes interview. And let me tell you why. So my client hired us to sue USCIS because they had been waiting for a decision on their I-751 for over 3 years. And they had been waiting so long that they had gone ahead and applied for citizenship. So we filed a lawsuit against USCIS in Washington, D.C. for the delay, and the interview was scheduled for this week. Now, as I mentioned, this couple has been married for, well, actually, I didn't mention it. They've been having their 751 pending for 3 years, but they've been married for over 5 or 6 years. They have 2 children. They've lived together the entire time, and the whole idea that we were even going to have a Stokes interview was dumb. And USCIS will do this. Some field offices conduct Stokes interviews as a matter of course. In other words, that's their default, that if anyone's applying for an immigration benefit, that they're going to do a Stokes interview. Now, this one in particular, they even recorded. So I don't know what in the hell was going on. I don't know if this was a new officer or what, but here's the thing. He wasn't even very good at the Stokes interview. So it was all sort of a mess. It was all sort of random. Now, maybe he's like Columbo, this old detective when I was a kid who just sort of fumbles around and figures things out, but I didn't really have that sense. Usually when you have a Stokes interview, the officer is going to ask the same questions to both parties. And if I were going to do a Stokes interview, I would ask all my questions, I would write down the questions and the answers, and then I would wait to see, then I would go down the questions in roughly the same order. Now, when we did the Stokes interview, of course, the parties are not both in the interview room at the same time. So here, the officer actually went ahead and conducted the N400 and said that everything was approvable if the marriage was okay. So we did the test, we did the N400 questions, and then he switched to the Stokes interview for the beneficiary. And the beneficiary did great. The beneficiary had very clear answers, very smart person, everything went fine. But then the officer did a curious thing. He didn't go in order and ask those same questions. He sort of bounced around. It was very improvisational. He was taking notes on a piece of paper. I really don't understand, nor did I feel it was very effective, the way he approached this. So the good thing was that my clients answered virtually every single question exactly the same. There were a couple little discrepancies, but you know what? I don't mind that. I like when there are little discrepancies. Now, don't try to be clever, don't try to be cute. And the reason the Stokes interview went so well is because this was a real marriage. I mean, they have 2 kids. They were accurate about what time bedtime was. They were accurate about what the routine was. They were accurate about who the last friend's house they visited for dinner was. I mean, the officer was sort of all-encompassing with his questions. The questions went all over. They were talking about their living arrangements, their banking arrangements, who pays the bills. Everything was very thorough, but it was just a little bit messy. So I'm reasonably confident. I'm very confident that this case is going to be approved, and I'm happy for my clients. And so what can we take away from this? Well, one thing that we can take away from it is USCIS does a lot of dumb things. So there's no really real reason for a 2-hour Stokes interview for a couple that's been married for 6 years and has 2 kids. I just don't understand why you'd want to do a Stokes interview in a situation like that. But even if you're going to, it wasn't very well done, I don't think, in my opinion. Now, maybe the officer thinks he has this clever way of doing it and just sort of shooting from the hip, which was also interesting because it was being recorded, which means that his supervisors could watch it. And maybe that's why he did an extra long Stokes interview. It seemed absolutely ridiculous to me. Maybe somebody told him to record it, And so that's why he just kept going and going and going. I mean, it was so obvious, especially after the U.S. citizen came into the room to answer questions. I mean, every question after every question was almost identical in their answers. And, I was taking notes because, you never know what you're going to get from these goofball officers. And so you never know if they're going to say, oh, well, there was this little discrepancy and that little discrepancy, and leave out all the examples of the testimony they gave that was similar. Now, here it's videotaped, so there's not going to be really any dispute. But still, I took a lot of notes to make sure that I wrote down all the questions. We keep a running list in our office of Stokes interview questions, which is very helpful when we want to prep our clients for such an interview. So if you have a marriage-based case, or if you're worried about getting a Stokes interview in your case, please feel free to give us a call, 314-961-8200. You can email us at info@hackinglawpractice.com. Be sure to join us in our Facebook group, which is called Immigrant Home. And make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that whenever we make a video, it'll show up on your timeline. And then usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but not today because I'm traveling, we have a call-in show answering as many of your immigration-related questions as possible in the Immigrant Home group and in the Facebook group. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.